Welcome to this audio clip, which is taken from our series entitled Multihull Conversations with Jim Brown. In this segment, Jim interviews longtime multi-hull boat builder, sailor, and school teacher Scot Copeland.
Well, I think all of my framing lumber for this boat was about that much money. And this boat was neat because it was framed in Sitka spruce, which would be prohibitive nowadays. But the longitudinals and the chine logs and the cross beams were all Sitka spruce. And I think the whole bill for that and the plywood was probably about $1,000, maybe a little more.
Gee, well, things have changed. You know, we've got just a meteoric escalation of prices for boat building materials now. And it turns out that the whole Sea Clipper series is intended for construction out of non-marine materials. And I think it's just great that you did it when you did it. And I'm hoping that there'll be more people who will consider doing it today. There's a lot of, really wonderful things you can do with the materials that are available today, coming from Lowe's and Home Depot and stuff, but it depends a lot on your willingness to build something that's not yachty. And I think the Sea Clipper series, and we've got designs now, that start at 10 feet and go all the way up to 42 feet. That particular series, it's why I'm so interested in talking to you. Tell me what you did with your boat now. Where did you go from here?
Well, the boat never left San Diego under my hands. It was sold up to the Channel Islands, and I later reconnected with it. I wanted to comment sailing on it here, and then on a sister ship on the Big Island, which was built with a generator in the jungle, literally. I forget the gentleman's name who built it, but would sail off a helo in his Sea Clipper 28. And those V-shaped amas were really interesting. The boat was what you'd call tender initially because of that shape, but boy, once that thing heeled on over and the displacement, goes up exponentially, it settled into just kind of a stable place. And the beams would come on down and would just solidify, and it was a very comfortable ride. And I have to believe it had something to do with those amas and their shape. It was very comfortable. My boat, upwind, if it wasn't hands off, it literally one or two fingers. It just not only did it point well, but just balanced perfectly. And I did, although I found a mast that was long and it was damaged on one end, I shortened it and got it for $400 and welded up a mast step. It was completely built to your guys' specs, with the exception that it had a little bit of roach and some battens, but the thing just balanced perfectly right out of the box. And I didn't know, of course, anything about rig tension or anything, but just put it up there and tightened things up, and away we went. And it just sailed beautifully.
Well, that's really great to hear. I must say that designing trimarans in a way, in a very limited way, it's kind of a cop-out. It's pretty easy to get them to balance. And the reason is that particularly with those floats that have rather a lot of wet surface for their displacement, when you start to heel the boat, the mast, of course, swings out to leeward, downwind, which in a monohull tends to drive the boat around up into the wind and causes quite a lot of weather helm. You have to really hang on to the helm, whether it's a wheel or a tiller, in order to keep the boat from heading up into the wind. Well, trimarans don't behave like that. They, as the boat heels to leeward, and the thrust in the sail plan tends to want to drive the bow up into the wind, the resistance, the increasing resistance on the downwind AMA hull tends to counteract that turning force. It tends to try to pull the boat off the wind, and those two forces balance each other. And so it's easy to make it right. And there are some multi-hulls that are not right. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen all the time, but that explains the really rather docile control performance of particularly the earlier, the simpler multi-hulls. And I'm glad to hear about it. My old Piver 24-footer, the Nugget, it would steer itself upwind. I could just let go of the tiller and climb out on the float and hike, and it would steer itself upwind to the extent that it would bear off in the lulls and head up in the puffs all by itself. I couldn't do it better myself. I let the boat do it.
Well, I think you're awfully humble. A friend of mine had a highly modified Cross 24. It had been extended to 26 and had been previously owned by a rigger and had this amazing rig on it, way more advanced than the one on my Sea Clipper. And we had a chance to go sailing against each other a couple of times. And not only was the Sea Clipper 28 considerably faster, it was a beamier and everything, but this is in fairly light winds, but would way outpoint this boat too. So it would outpoint a heavily modified Cross 24 and was faster. And
well, if it hadn't been modified, Norman might have had the right idea,
Oh, well, there you go. Well, this thing had been lengthened with the transom extension, so that should have improved speed, and it had more sail area. So the basic boat wasn't really destroyed, but it was definitely modified for speed.
Well, yeah, but the designer might have had it going as fast as it was intended to go for that particular hull form. Adding length on the stern does not necessarily make a boat faster. Adding length makes a boat faster. But what happens in there is that these extended sterns that so many owner-builders and some designers are so tempted to put onto their boats, the big swim step business. I've done it myself to scrimshaw, my old Sea Runner 31. It did not help the speed because it tends to increase pitch. The hobby horsing motion gets a kick in the butt every time the crest of the wave passes under the stern, and it causes the boat to pitch down over the back of the wave rather abruptly, and it's not just the boat, it's the rig. It tends to jiggle the mast around up in the air so that the wind never has a chance to steady down over the sails. It does not necessarily increase speed. So when a designer designs a boat for a given length, it's not a good idea to mess around with it, in my opinion.
Well, that's so neat. I mean, I think about your project here with recording your experiences, and I just think how many people around the world are going to hear your comments and just go, this guy knows what he's talking about. This is such a wonderful opportunity to hear you say this stuff.
Well, anybody... Well, it's a wonderful opportunity for me to have you tell me of really forming your life around your passion for boats. Let's go on about that.
Thanks for listening. To find out how to obtain this complete audio conversation, as well as all of the audios in this historic multi-hull series, please visit us on the web at www.outrigmedia.com.